We're starting off with our theme, which is selflessness, nadiבות, and we basically decided that the perfect metaphor for our nadiבות and our selflessness would be a dandelion. The way that it works is that the boy, he blows a dandelion, and the dandelion is like his source good deed. And basically what happens is that the dandelion spreads. So every time the dandelion spreads, it plants another seed in every place that it lands. And then another dandelion comes up. So it basically shows the chain reaction of the dandelion of the mitzvah. When one person does a good deed, it spreads throughout, it creates a chain reaction of good deeds, and everybody just starts doing good deeds. So we have a boy blowing the dandelion into the feathers of the pasuk. שלושה דברים העולם עומד על התורה, על העבודה ועל גמילות חסדים. So that's how that started right there. Now, as we go on, we're going to see all the mitzvot of the dandelion pushes us north. And throughout the whole thing, we have the yellow bird, which is traveling us through the whole journey of our nidus and our kindness and our selflessness. So the first thing that we see is the world, and we see the olam. And this is just basically representing throughout the world, the hesed that goes on throughout the world. So we have the world and everybody hand in hand. Kindness connects us all, and kindness is something that we can just like have a shared common base. For example, we have everybody like gets connected through Hatzalah. You don't know somebody, but the Hatzalah man came to your door and he did this because of selflessness. He didn't have to. And you don't know somebody around the world, and you go to Chabad, and you know who they are just because they have that common goal of selflessness and something that brings them together with you. So that's this. And then, of course, we have the fan, which is representing our wind, which represents the wind blowing selflessness and throughout the entire hallway.
Coming back this way.
Yeah. Okay, so when we come here, we see that throughout time in Judaism, selflessness is a very big deal, and we see it happening all over. So in the old times, the biblical times, we have Moshe Rabbeinu, and he was like the epitome of selflessness. He decided he took on the role of leader, and from the time when he was young to like things just with throughout being the shepherd and taking care of the sheep all day and everything like that, to being the leader and having all the people follow him, and he decided that he was going to take on this role even though he didn't feel confident enough. He told God, why don't you pick my older brother, because he's confident and he can speak, he had the list we remember, but God said, no, I choose you, and he decided to take on the role, and he devoted his entire life to selflessness and to being the leader of the entire world. He didn't even get to go to Am Yisrael. That's complete selflessness. Into Eretz Yisrael, that is complete selflessness. The fact that he did all this for Am Yisrael and he didn't even get the reward in the end. We have the modern day version of Moshe Rabbeinu, which we can all look at as the Sahal leader, the Sahal soldier. The Sahal soldier is the person that puts his life at risk every single day for the goal of the nation, Am Yisrael, just like Moshe Rabbeinu. He does it in modern times. And he's just someone that we can all look up to as for selflessness and kindness, because he really just epitomizes it in modern day times, someone that we can look up to. When we move on to the women's side,
before we move on, can you read the Hebrew verse and tell me what it says? My Hebrew's not so good.
Oh, sure. כיוון שהגיע משה אצילנו, אמר אני לא הייתי יודע.
אצלנו או
Oh, where?
כיוון שהגיע משה
אצילנו.
חסר היו אצלנו.
Okay. אמר אני לא הייתי יודע. What?
חסר.
אמר אני לא הייתי יודע, שרף הייתי מפני שמה. עץ עתה הרכיבו.
אף אתה?
אף עתה הרכיבו על כתיפו והיה מהלך, אמר הקדוש ברוך הוא, יש לך רחמים לנהוג צאנו של בשר ודם, כך היה אתה תראת צאני ישראל.
Alright, so pretty much it's talking about Moshe when he was a shepherd and he was a selfless leader for the sheep, and then it translates into the like when he used that in him when he was the leader of Bnei Israel, and he was a selfless leader of Bnei Israel also.
קצת דקטקתם את זה עם
Laura helped us on that one.
Yeah. We wanted to read the line here to give her the credit of all the sheep. Okay, so now as we move on, we see the women's side of all the selfless leaders. So we have, just like Moshe Rabbeinu epitomizes the selflessness in our Tanakh times, we have Rachel Amenu, and she was a selfless leader. She when we look at Rabbi Mona, we see everything that she did as selflessness. We see how she gave up her husband to her sister La'az, so her sister wouldn't take on the embarrassment of not having a husband first, even though because she was the oldest. She knew about it the night we know that she knew about it before the wedding took place, and she let her husband get tricked into thinking that it was really her because she didn't want her sister to go through that embarrassment, and that's really selflessness. The fact that marriage is the biggest pride that a woman can really have, and it's your time, you know what I mean? You don't think about anybody else, and she really thought about her sister, and it was really inspiring to see that because it just shows that like we could all be like that. And then we have in the modern times, or not exactly right now, but someone that we can look up to as more recent is Harriet Tubman. And we know that Harriet Tubman, she was already a freed slave. She didn't need to go back and save everybody else. Like we know that people like Rosa Parks, everybody like throughout history, they did it, but they were part of it really, and they were doing it for themselves and everybody else. But we see that Harriet Tubman, she didn't need to go back and save all the slaves. She was free, she was in the North, and she went back and she basically ran, and she was one of the leaders of the Underground Railroad, and she brought a lot of the slaves back to freedom. And she's really also an inspiring woman that we can look up to for that. So that's just another type of selflessness. Now as we move on through the hallway, we see that another example of selflessness that happened throughout time was the Holocaust. This is something that's brought up a lot of times, and we bring it up in school all the time, and we get very passionate about it because we don't realize how selfless all the people, not even the Jewish people, but all the not Jewish people that didn't have to risk their lives. They weren't in danger. They had blonde hair. Hitler was fine with them, and he didn't want to take them down. But we see that they hid the Jews in their basement, and even though it wasn't the greatest living conditions, but they did what they could because they knew that was much better than being in a concentration camp. And if they were found, they would have been taken away. But a lot of people, we see that they hid people, and it's something we could look up to and say that, okay. Yeah. So we tried to recreate the house and the underground, and we basically say we never forget. We never forget also for the bad things that they did to us. We never forget also the kindness that was done to us, because we always think of the bad, but we have to think of the good too. So moving on. Now we're a little bit small. This is what? Oh, we were like second up a little bit. Well, I think it's nice to see things on the wall. Okay, so as we go on, we see the relationships. So now we're going to go through the three major relationships that we felt associated best with nadiבות and selflessness. The first one is the teacher and student relationship. We see that the teachers, they go above and beyond, and we see, especially in school, more small. So we see that, so teachers, it's not just that they're teaching a classroom. They could have picked any profession. They could have been anything, but they decided to give their lives to teaching children, educating children, and it's really something remarkable because it's not something that you're doing for yourself. You're trying to bring the success of each and every student. If you wanted to do it for yourself, you would have just taught the day and whatever, but you answer questions, you stay after school. We're doing color war right now because you know that it's just something that's extra for the students because you want everybody to be reading something.
I didn't make the wall.
Joyce. So the pasuk that's there, it's about Moshe, and it just says that Moshe taught L'kisha Adam Torah Melamed Kala Melamed Ben Havera Torah Ma'aleh Alav Hakatu Ki'il Yalda. So it means that someone who teaches a student, it's like the parents. So parents are selfless, so a teacher is just as selfless as a parent.
Should we go that way?
Yeah, we're going to take you through the relationships more, and then we'll come back to the elevator part.
I see right there.
You're gonna find your face, I'll find it for you. There you are.
Okay, so we're going to follow the elevator road.
Let's follow the elevator.
We're going to bring you back to the elevator just because we want to continue on with the relationships. So the next relationship that we see that is associated with nadiבות is the parent relationship, the parent-child relationship. So we wanted to show the mother that does it all. We wanted to show the parents that really shine through, and they juggle everything, but the selflessness that they do for their child is amazing. And we see the mother, she's juggling everything. She's juggling the house, cleaning the house, and taking care of her baby, and cooking the dinner, and driving the car, and doing the groceries, and everything like that. But she does it all, and she's selfless, and she does everything for her children. And once you become a parent, it's really something that you don't ever let go of that. It's just something that's with you forever. So that's the most selfish job I think of all. And when you see the drips that are happening, it's just to show that like her life is a mess and she has a million things going on, but she keeps it together with the circle and
Yeshivah. You guys seem to disproportionately highlight the efforts of women. Is there any reason why? No, there are some men, but in this case, you know, a parenting team, as I have now learned myself, is made up of 2 people. I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I just wonder if you saw, if even your team.
It's more connected to the Torah.
I see.
It'll reflect on the modern.
It'll be clear later.
Yeah, modern and history.
yeah, we try to tie in as much modern and
History throughout the whole law.
And then
okay, fine.
Oh, we see that.
Tomo.
Okay, so yeah, so we're trying to always like give you the Sahal Moshe, so we're doing the Yocheved and the modern mother. So Yocheved was the, so yeah, you want to read this? Yeah, she was Moshe's mother and she was selfless and she hit her child. Guys. She hit her child and she could have been killed by Paro. They were throwing out all the babies, but she decided to hide her child and she decided not to give up her baby because it was worth it to her. And this is Moshe.
In the basket. A little Moshe in the basket.
Yeah, so she also epitomizes
Didn't
like,
fall down, good.
she was like the Tanakh version of the mother that really was selfless for her parents, so we just tried to recreate it over there. And then over here in the middle, separating the biblical and the modern is the parent wall that we created. So we used like a gel medium to get the pictures onto the wood. And
I didn't know how you did it. I was like, they don't know how to do this. So.
But we do.
Yeah, we
But you
do.
do?
But we do.
there's a special gel, you put it on the wood and then you put the picture. And then you wait a little bit and then
You could, it
the
comes
white,
right
but
on.
it's
We brought my love now.
That's Vivian, her mom.
And then we got quotes from,
I know. I saw it right away.
Oh, there you are.
and
I love
then
her.
we got
But
quotes.
it's like this.
Yeah.
Well, we got quotes from people. Then we got quotes from everybody. We tried to get diverse range of quotes in the school. What being a parent, being selfless means to you. So you see, Betty says it's the best thing that ever happened to me, and just you can read all of them, and it's just makes it a little bit more personal. So.
Put them muted. Nice.
They're gone.
Beautiful job.
Is clothes on you?
No,
She ended up finding it. She couldn't find her words on it.
yeah, she didn't have
She
the right
couldn't.
words to say.
Yeah, she didn't know what to.
But,
Wait,
okay.
What is the Hebrew verse? The Hebrew quote?
המשפחה היא הבסיס לחיים, לאמונה ולאהבה. The basic to life, to live and love.
Okay, so as we move on with the last relationship that we find to be selfless, we think that relationships in marriage are very selfless because truth is you can't get married and you can't have that commitment if you're not willing to be selfless and you're not willing to give to the other person. Because without that, then your relationship can't grow and it can't become anything more than what it was when the first time that you met. And you know that you talk to married couples all the time and they say, I love this person so much more. And you say, why? Like, what do you mean? Isn't the first spark the most interesting spark? And they say no, because once you take from your partner and you give, and it's not about taking, it's about giving. And once you do that, then the relationship really grows. So we have the pa and the marriage and yeah,
Bride and groom.
bride and the groom.
Should we go back to the?
And then we just bring it back here. We say that everything throughout the hallway has been a chain reaction, and the fact that this boy blew the dandelion and one good deed happened, the entire hallway gets to flourish and with good deeds.
Get the whole lot.
And then we just want to bring you guys to the hallway for a minute.
Or just like
It's not really fair to rush the other two. כן, אבל אנחנו צריכים קצת יותר מהר.
Okay, so we'll.
Is that the last
part.
Okay. So we have into the elevator. Okay, so into the elevator, we really wanted it to be like, as you come out of the elevator, something strikes you, something shows you that this is our nadiבות and this is our selflessness. So what happens is that we have this graffiti type of wall thing, but it's just the chaos that's going on in the world, and through that shines through the selflessness. So everybody's lifting each other up. Yeah. So we made stencils, we drew the stencils and we carved them out of the cardboard, and then we used the spray paint outside when we sprayed, that we just went freehand a little bit. Yeah, and then we have Talik with Gabriel, which is like the chain reaction going on. And then we have this side of the wall, which shows the helping hands and the pinwheels, which really we believe the pinwheels represent our winds and our moving on the mitzvah and keep on going. And the helping hands just as another additive because they're also add to the nadiבות themselves. And then and then this Hebrew, Sherry really came up with this cool, but we felt that it really tied both the walls together. Yad yad, everybody's hand in hand, everybody's with one ruach, everybody's
With the
doing it together.
with the wind and the hands
The
together.
ruach and everything, and we have the fans throughout to show our pain and to show the kindness spreading.
What?